Today I'm going to be making art inspired by cauliflower, and I'm going to be doing that using some colored pencils, which I chose because I thought they'd be good for bringing out the detail in the cauliflower, and also I thought I could blend them together nicely to bring some dimension to that white. I'm also going to be making the recipe that made me obsessed with cauliflower. It's from this cookbook All About Roasting by Molly Stevens, which is my favorite cookbook. So I start out with a regular pencil, just marking out the basic spacing and structure, just kind of figuring out where everything is going. Here's my assistant Nero inspecting the main ingredients, which are a cauliflower, a red onion, and a lemon. These are the rest of the ingredients: a teaspoon and a half of coriander, a teaspoon and a half of mustard seed, a quarter teaspoon red pepper flakes, kosher salt and black pepper, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and fresh parsley. Now I go in and fill in all the gaps from the structural markers I made before with some more detail. And all the footage is sped up from here on out for the drawing stuff because nobody needs this video to be multiple hours long. Preheat the oven to 325. Now I'm all done with the regular pencil and I'm ready to add some color. So what I do is I go through the entire drawing bit by bit and erase the regular pencil and replace it with colored pencil. So this allows me to fix anything that I didn't necessarily like with what I did with the regular pencil, and it allows me to go through and add more detail. So this will be kind of the final outline of the drawing. Next, you chop up the onion, which you're supposed to do in 1/2-inch wedges, but I always kind of forget to do that. And don't forget to wear goggles so that you don't cry. Now that everything green is outlined, I'm going to start shading, which is a pretty long process. And I'm starting to shade now as opposed to outlining the rest of the cauliflower just to give my hand a bit of a rest. I find the motions for shading to be a little bit easier on the hands and for drawing lines. I don't press too hard when I'm shading with a lighter color to get a darker color because that'll just make the color brighter. So it's all about layering with darker colors and grays and blacks. So you core the cauliflower and then you chop it up into 1.5-inch pieces. I'm using purple now to start outlining the white parts of the cauliflower. And I chose purple because I thought the cauliflower had this sort of billowy white cloud look to it. So I thought purple would be a good base color for this because it's one of the most prominent tones in clouds at sunset. And also there's purple colored cauliflowers too. That's Nero telling me that it's time for dinner. Then you add the olive oil to the cauliflower and onion and mix it in. Now I'm bringing in a warm gray to start shading the white part of the cauliflower, and I'm trying to keep that cloud vibe in mind, having it be kind of like a soft cotton. In the sketch that I did in preparation for this, I got a little bit too detailed and I went a little too dark on the darks, and so the end product ended up being kind of grotesque and not like something you'd want to really eat, so I'm trying to back off from that a bit. Then you use a mortar and pestle to grind up the coriander, but I'm sure you could buy pre-ground if you don't have one. Now I'm using some yellow to shade to bring some warmth to both the white and the green parts of the cauliflower because they both have some yellow in them. I shade with the purple, keeping it light but adding some detail as I go, just filling in the blanks that I spaced out before. Again, trying not to get too crazy detailed, but just giving some structure to it and some shape. And then you coarsely grind the mustard seed. Again, I'm sure you can buy mustard seed that's already ground. It just won't taste as good or look as cool. Now I shade with pink to mix with the yellow to kind of bring in that orangey shade that you see in cauliflower sometimes. Then I add peach for some more warmth and more of those clouds at sunset tones. I like to mix the spices together before adding them to the vegetables, then they get distributed more evenly. Now I'm bringing in some darker greens to add some dimension and depth. As you can see, there's kind of 2 different shades of green in the leaves here. One of them is more of a blue tone jungle green, and one is a sort of grassy yellowish toned green. So you mix the spices into the vegetables and stir all that up. Now I'm bringing in a gray to start adding some shading. As I said, it's better to use grays to shade stuff as opposed to just pushing down harder on a lighter color because that'll just make it brighter as opposed to darker. And I do a little bit of shadowing here to separate the leaf from the white part of the cauliflower to give it some 3-dimensionality. Now I'm using a warm gray for some shading here. It's nice to use grays to shade because they're not as harsh as black, but they're still a nice neutral color. I like to start off as light color-wise and as sort of general as possible, and then I add darker colors in detail as I go in because it's a lot easier to fix mistakes with a light color than a dark color. And put the cauliflower on a pan covered with parchment paper, which is the best thing ever, by the way. It makes this just so easy. And you put it in the oven for about 1.5 hours. And then here what I'm doing is separating the cauliflower from the background by doing a bit of shading. I didn't want to do a full background because I thought it would distract from the cauliflower itself, but I also wanted to separate it from the whiteness of the page because it is a white vegetable. So that's what I did here, a sort of gray halo. While the cauliflower is cooking, you want to take it out every half hour or so and stir it so it doesn't get burnt on one side. So now I use the final color black, which I am aware is not a color, but I'm doing all of the final outlines, little finishing touches. And I like to do an outline when I use colored pencils because they can be kind of soft and the outline adds a little bit of definition. That's the lemon and parsley that I cut in half and chopped up, but I didn't film, so you'll just have to believe me that it happened. And I sign it, and it's done. So you take the cauliflower out. Then you sprinkle everything with parsley, which is optional, but I recommend it. And then you squirt it with lemon juice. And I always save the other half of the lemon for leftovers. And now it's all done and ready to eat. Here is a little time lapse. And there's the finished product. Thanks so much for watching.